Tunisia is located only a few kilometers away from Sicily. The Roman influence is therefore still very obvious. In 800 BC, the Punic Tunis was only a small village in the shadow of Carthage. Today, Tunis is a modern city with 1.2 million inhabitants. Wherever we look, the Tunisian flag is hoisted everywhere. The 5 columns of Islam, the state religion of Tunisia, are symbolized by a pentacle. The Muslims believe in God being the only one and Muhammad being his prophet. The teaching of Allah calls the faithful to pray, to fast, to give alms, and to make pilgrimage to Mecca. The Tunisian bazaars, the souks, tempt the tourist en masse to Medina, the oldest town in Tunisia, where the huge bazaars allure the visitors with traditional goods and African art. In the souk, one can buy water pipes, for example. Another way to enjoy tobacco is in the numerous cafes, where Tunisian men like to meet and chat while smoking a water pipe. One finds Tunisian originality in the winding streets of the souk. Most of the goods at the bazaar are made on the spot. The visitor can watch this process and even express his or her own wishes. The Tunisians win their customers over thanks to their friendly approach, whilst making shopping even more comfortable with the Arabic equivalent to beverage home delivery. The traditional headgear in Tunisia is the so-called chechia, which is handmade in the souk. The hat maker Abd el-Qadir al-Youi is famous for his craft. He receives fan mail from the whole world, and he can tell us a lot about the origin and development of Arabic headgear. This one is being bought only by women. They wear it at weddings and other festive occasions. This hat is therefore decorated and embroidered with pearls. The others here are destined for other countries. This one is, for example, worn in Morocco or Turkey. Here, people wear a dark red chechia, just like the one I have on. It is a tradition in Tunisia. Actually, the chechias originate from Spain. In the 8th century, they came on the trade route from Spain to Maghreb. To get more acquainted with the history of the land, one shouldn't fail to visit the Bardo Museum. There is a world-famous archaeological collection placed in the rooms of the Bey Palace that was built in 1859. Mainly Roman mosaics created in the time between the 2nd century BC and the 7th century AD are exhibited here. Amongst the oldest exhibits are these 2,700-year-old Punic tombstones. Tunisia possesses the world's largest mosaics collection. The Romans occupied Tunisia in those days, and they brought their riches from beyond the Mediterranean Sea to a safe place. These mosaics come from a variety of places in Tunisia. Altogether, there were 240 excavated in nearly complete condition. Here we can see, for example, the famous mosaic of Odysseus on his Odyssey near the Sirens Island. As proudly related in the history of Tunisia, Homer's hero might have met these singing creatures off the Tunisian coast. One of the most valuable mosaics in the world depicts Virgil between the Muses. On his knees, the poet holds a papyrus roll with the 8th verse of his work Aeneas. This mosaic is stored in the beautifully decorated harems quarter of the Bey Palace. Mens sana in corpore sano. A healthy spirit lives in a healthy body. This at least was taught by the old Romans. After a cultural trip, one should relax a bit and mix with the people. They meet at a late hour in the streets to enjoy crepes and other specialities. But when night comes to Tunis, most of the tourists disappear into their buses and return back to their holiday resorts on the Mediterranean. Hardly any strangers are left in the capital. Not many tourists visit this land just because of Tunis, even though the city can offer a lot. A few kilometers away from Tunis is Sidi Bou Said. This rocky village was closed to non-Muslims until 1819. Fortunately, this rule is not in place anymore, since each detail here is a work of art, and the view over the harbour and the Gulf of Tunis is truly picturesque. On their Tunisian journey of 1914, the three painters Malha-Louis Moilier, Paul Klee and Auguste Macke painted this very panorama. Shortly before his death, Auguste Macke had depicted the Café des Nattes in his picture A Look at a Mosque. Today this cafe is a meeting place for people to sing, drink mint tea and relax together. It is recommended one continues the trip to another harbour town that is located about 150 kilometres southwards from Tunis, Port El Kantaoui. This town was built in 1970 only, in Andalusian style, to attract tourists and well-off Tunisians. The charm of the so-called Tunisian Saint-Tropez is nearly impossible to escape from. The centre is simply attractive, and it oozes with a Mediterranean holiday atmosphere. The harbour, though, is traditionally Arabic, but has naturally adapted to foreign guests as well. Travellers have many opportunities to put to sea here. At first one can watch tiny fish from a small yellow submarine, whilst divers can observe impressive objects very closely below. The journey continues further southwards past olive trees into the surroundings of Monastir. For those keen on golf, the Flamingo Monastir golf course with an area of 110 hectares is a must. Located on a plateau, one can view the whole landscape up to the sea during the game. The fortress at Cap Afrique in Mahdia offers a magnificent view as well. The massive structure originating from the 16th century is called Borj El Kebir. In front of it, an Islamic cemetery is located. Its simplicity symbolizes the teaching of the Quran. One enters the world without any possessions and leaves the world in a similar state as well. The Quran is read aloud during prayer times. This task is incumbent upon the muezzin, such as Yassin Othman here in Mahdia. 5 times a day the muezzin calls for prayer. I talk into a microphone so that all people in Mahdia can hear that it is time for prayer. Either they come to the mosque then, or they pray at home. Only a man can work as a muezzin. It is forbidden for women to do this job. The muezzin is elected at an assembly. Usually one is chosen who has a fine and strong voice. Every Friday there is a weekly market in Mahdia. Although the town is rightly a favourite target of tourists, one can still obtain original things at the market. Smells, colours and different powders attract the visitors. The women of Mahdia buy here various flowers to produce a kind of universal medicine. Chadlia Kwadja shows us the process of distillation. The citrus blooms and water is poured into the distillator. While the distillator is being heated at the bottom, some more cold water is always poured in at the top, which is important. Already, after a short time, the first warm drops run through a lace-edged cloth that serves as a strainer against dirt. I make this water only in spring, for citrus blooms are available only during springtime. Depending on how much one wants to produce, one puts 1 or 2 kilos of blooms onto 1 or 2 litres of water into the distillator. After about 1 hour, the essence is ready. Cooled down, it tastes good in cakes or in biscuits. The water produced in this way is suitable for preventing headaches as well as being good for childcare. And while the women do work at home, the Mahdia's men are having their discussion at the famous Place de Caire in front of the cafes. In the south of Tunisia, the desert begins. In the middle of this desert, tasty dates grow en masse at an oasis. The farmers give their date palms a lot of care. There are male and female palms there. The female ones have to be pollinated in spring. Young date palm farmers such as Mohsen Aoun undertake this work. First he climbs up the male palms to steal their seeds. Then, loaded with pollen, he climbs up the female palms. The female flowers are opened by hand and male seeds are placed inside them. To mark the palm as already pollinated and to protect the blooms against wind, the men tie up the tops. It looks difficult and tiring, but Mohsen likes his work and dreams about his own plantation. When I was a small boy, my father taught me how to climb. He taught me as well how to prune the palms again and again. If the palms are not cultivated at a certain time, then no dates will grow. In autumn, the dates are harvested, and then they have to be dried for about half a year before they can be eaten. At the market of Garbes, a town bordering on the oasis, one can buy fresh dates at an incredibly good price, as well as fruits. Garbes is known not only for the dates, but also for henna. These plants that are being dried at the market and offered in powder form grow in the nearby oasis as well. Tunisian women decorate their skin traditionally with ornaments of henna designed to prevent disasters. Even tourists can have an original henna design tattooed at a bazaar. Back to the old Romans. One of the best preserved amphitheatres in the world stands in El Jem. Built in 230 BC by the Romans, it seated 30,000 members of the audience, who cheered the gladiators in their battles with the lions. In Roman times, 2,000 years ago, El Jem was the second largest town in Roman Africa. Today, only a few thousand people live there. In the mighty arcade passages, even today one could get lost very easily, though the visitor shouldn't miss the chance to breathe in the air of Imperial Rome. It is quite unique that one can explore these ancient ruins in complete peace and on one's own initiative. This magnificent building is the third largest of its type from the Roman Empire, and it is nearly as large as the Colosseum in Rome itself. The building creates an oval of 148 by 122 metres. The arena is approximately 65 metres long. Preparatory rooms for the gladiators, cages with animals and gloomy dungeons for the slaves were placed underneath it. Sfax is maybe the richest town in Tunisia. This can be recognised by the villas and manor houses during a sightseeing tour. Palms, cacti and bougainvillea embellish the streets and gardens around the houses. The Roman harbour used to export olive oil, olive soap, olive perfume and olive wood. Besides phosphate, oil is exported from here today. From the Romans to the original population of North Africa. The Ksur region is located in the south of Tunisia, where one typical village follows another in the middle of the stony desert. This hole had been dug into the soft rock strata. Even today these villages are partially inhabited, for example Chenini. The barbarian tribes are considered very stubborn. In the exciting history of Tunisia, they had never been subject to any authority's rule. Though there is a leader in the small splinter groups, usually he has rather a symbolic function. The barbarians have adapted their living holes perfectly to the local environmental factors. They led in Chenini a very unique life, possessing only local materials accessible to them. They were well disguised and successfully resisted the climate. Tuyana is another barbarian village in the Ksol region. The white mosque shines in the distance over the flat stone houses. Islam achieved what political leaders failed to achieve. Most of the barbarians feel they belong to the Muslim world, and Arabicization is nearly completely observed. The wind-tanned faces of the barbarians portray a poor life in the desert. But even in the desert, one pastime is observed. The Arabic version of the board game drafts is called kherkha. In this region one can meet even nomads. As time went on, nearly all Tunisian nomads settled down. 19-year-old Moldi Turki is just pitching his tent. Together with his 3 sisters, he constructs a fence for the 40 sheep that belong to his parents. Moldi has to take care of the cattle in spring and summer. There is enough for the animals to graze on outside. The family had to rely on simple provisions on their travels. The flour necessary for the most basic food, bread, is ground in a stone mill. Water is carried to the tent on a donkey from nearby villages, and the water is kept cool in a sheepskin bottle. My father rides a camel to work. I am the youngest, and my brothers have standard jobs, such as any other young person. However, I do this work here because I like it. Besides, I'm here with my 3 sisters, and I can look after them. The landscape brings danger as well. However, Moldy cannot wander further until the sheep have grazed all the grass. When it is too stormy or too hot, the nomads move into the empty crater dwellings once built by the barbarians in the middle of this wilderness. The sheep can graze here cheaply. Other places are a bit more expensive. In this way we can bring up the sheep well and sell them later, for we earn our money by selling the animals. What is bad in this life is that it is so boring. I do the same thing every day. When we move on, we have to transport all the tools, and this is very demanding. A barely accessible slope leads us to Matmata, a barbarian village with crater dwellings. These hole dwellings are gathered around 6-meter deep holes in the ground. An old barbarian, Abdullah Abidi, adapted his living hole very cosily, and he praises the advantages of these crater dwellings. This dwelling is 200 years old and it belonged to my grandparents. Crater dwellings are cool in summer and warm in winter, and therefore they are especially suitable for old people like me. It takes about 1 year to build or dig out such a crater dwelling. Matmata gained its fame due to its crater dwellings, for these served as a couliss for some of the scenes in Star Wars. Some relics still remind us of the world-famous film saga directed by George Lucas. The inventive Tunisians made a hotel of this tract in the meantime. The underground rooms, though, do not appeal only to fans of Star Wars. Whoever looks for something exceptional can find it here in Sidi Driss. The rooms are very simply furnished, as one would expect in an old barbarian housing area. George Lucas shot some scenes in the first episode of his Star Wars saga in the Qasar Hadada village too. An old granary, the so-called Ghurfas, and the comb-like dwellings of the barbarians, the Qasur, are a real attraction in Qasar Hadada. In the meantime, the barbarians live in a new village outside of Ghurfas. One can still recognize the signs of comfort in these unusual comb-formed rooms, which are scenery created for Hollywood. In 1997, when the first episode was filmed here, a lot of the villagers worked as extras. Abdeselim Saidi among them. When Star Wars was shot here, the film crew showered the whole ground with sand. A space shuttle station was built here as well. I was an extra, and we extras were given special iron costumes. The camera people were very kind to us. Unfortunately, though, the actors did not seek any contact with us. I have no idea if they are always like this or if they were just concentrating so much. The director George Lucas was sometimes joking around with us though. But he often had too much to do and could not worry about the extras. The architecture of Qasur fascinates most visitors here in Qasar Hadada, whether they are Star Wars fans or not. Off the Tunisian coast lies the island Djerba. One goes mainly to the southern coast of Djerba when looking for a recreational swimming holiday. The fine sandy beaches usually belong to the beautiful hotel complexes, but natural beaches can be found on Djerba as well. Tourists are offered a great variety concerning spare time activities. This island is a paradise for families as well as for sportsmen. So one can play football, tennis, or just laze around in the shadows of the palms and lie around at the pool. Water rats also can get a slice of the action on Djerba. One can sail, paddle, or just swim, of course. Hongsuk, the capital of the island, comes across as colourful and friendly. 25,000 people live here. Seok means the market part of any town, and even though the town is more than that today, one should go to this marketplace just to see the famous fish auction with one's own eyes. As soon as the dealers hold their fish over the heads of the audience, bidding begins. Only local people don't lose track of things during this spectacle. This course of events is so traditional that one could soon forget that 500,000 tourists spend their holiday on Djerba every year. At the market, one can watch how the islanders obtain their groceries. One of the Tunisian specialities are natural sponges as well as hand-knit carpets. The geometric patterns often have a symbolic meaning, and they should bring luck and fertility to the owners. 1 to 2,000 knots per square metre is the density. It is nearly always women who earn some extra dinars for the family budget in this way. Another characteristic is the rich red of the silk. The national women's costume is made of hand-woven cloth. Pottery in Arabic colours and forms. At a bazaar in Djerba's capital, the purses of tourists keen on souvenirs are soon emptied. The small works of art made of clay are usually made in Gualala, which is 40 kilometres away from Hongsuk. This village is the home of the traditional art of Tunisian pottery. Of course, one can watch the process of creating it, which raises the buyer's interest. At least one gets original souvenirs, guaranteed to be genuine. The most important place of Jewish pilgrimage is located on Djerba as well, the synagogue La Khriba, which more or less means the miracle working. Today's building dates from 1920, but the origin of the synagogue goes back to 590 BC. The Jews of Djerba were endangered in World War II. Lots of them emigrated to Israel during this period and after the war. In 1969, 67,000 Jews lived in Tunisia. But today the parish on Djerba is the largest Jewish community in the whole of Tunisia and has only 100 faithful members. The Jews withdraw here to pray, and La Khriba remains a symbol of Jewish presence in North Africa. In April 2002, an attempt was made on the oldest synagogue in Africa by Al-Qaeda. Tunisia, a land with the atmosphere of the 1001 Nights. Tunisia exudes the charms of the Orient, attracts with varied appeal, and is known for its hospitality. Whoever wants to experience adventure, history, and relaxation at the same time is in Tunisia at the right place.